Once again, here is my talk on the media platform of Restructuring Nigeria network. And today, dressed up in my Niger Delta attire, I will be speaking on the controversial subject of restoring Nigeria, a subject which many people prefer to talk about only in hushed tones. So, what is restructuring? And why did a certain leader insist that restructuring is a must? Let me begin by pointing out that ensuring a stable polity, a country where people can live and go about their business in peace, is the cardinal mission of government. Where this fails, everything else would at best be futile and at worst result in political chaos and anarchy. The nation-building process of ensuring a stable, peaceful and prosperous country is a continuous process which keeps going on until the ideal system is achieved, if ever. At independence, being a British colony, we adopted the British ways, the loose British parliamentary system, the British classical educational system, its social conservatism, and even every other thing British. And soon afterwards, following its wounds of World War II, Great Britain lost almost all of its military, economic, and political powers. Sensing the opportunity, most of its colonies kicked it out and declared their independence. And with Britain losing its greatness and its position as the global hegemon, it was replaced by the United States of America, who had acquired a massive economic power and has built a monstrous military might to enforce its new position as the world's hegemon. As we all know, nobody stays with the weak, no matter how right, and everyone gravitates to the strong, no matter how wrong. Hence, with the fall of Britain and the rise of America, we were quick to abandon London for Washington and replace everything British with everything American. We changed our former British conservative values for American brashness. We replaced the dollar with the pound and changed from our jacket and ties to t-shirts and denim jeans. Just the way our military officers ran away from Sandhurst to enroll in West Point, we replaced our original British parliamentary system with the power-centric American presidential system. And we did all of this without considering our deep diversity and our multicultural and religious plurality. Worst of all, without having anything close to the economic and military power of America, which is necessary to enforce presidential coercions and commands. Well, at long last, the noose of the presidential system has become too tight for our own good. This is why we are having all these cries of marginalization, cheating, exclusions, which have grown into separatist agitations and are now turning into open insurgent rebellions. And this is why some manner of restructuring is now an urgent imperative if this country must survive. The challenge has been on agreeing on what form this restructuring has to be. Some say it is the return to regionalism of the past. Others demand for true or fiscal federalism. Some are calling for a confederation, while some others see nothing wrong in the present system because they are afraid that any tinkering could lead to break-up and separation. So therefore, if confederation and separations are impossible, and if a return to the parliamentary system of the First Republic is not convincing, given its historic instability and its eventual failure, then what should a middle-of-the-road solution be, given our deep diversity and our equally deep-rooted mistrust and suspicions of one another's intentions? To put this situation in some context, let me make an analogy. Let us for once imagine that our three big tribes and the rest of us are like four different beds. Now imagine that these four beds are tied together, so that One leg is tied with the legs of other birds to form a flopping bouquet of birds. And then you let them off to fly away. Of course, they cannot fly. What they will do is to spend all their time flopping around, pulling each other one way or the other, each having to endure the pains of the other's pull until death releases them from their sufferings. In the same way, if a group of chickens in a compound or a yard are tied together, one leg to the other in a similar way, except their owner is at hand to diligently care for them and to feed them, they will spend all their time pecking each other until they die, either of their injuries or from hunger and thirst. The solution is to loosen the binding rope and make it as long as possible. In that way, while the birds will remain bound to each other, at least they have the freedom to move around and scavenge for food within the confines of the compound or the yard. All of us know the saying that when people get too close, they begin to see the pimples in each other's faces. That is to say, they begin to see too much of each other's faults. And this is when the fighting will begin. That is exactly why even married couples sometimes need separate bedrooms. This itself is a form of restructuring. Presently, in our present situation, we are bound too tight and we have been brought too close, so much so that we cannot breathe. It is either we loosen up or we stay this close and continue to fight each other until death comes and separates us from our miseries. But kind enough, the time for us to address this life and death matter of restructuring is now at hand. And the presidential election of February 2023 provides us with an opportunity to begin to correct the distortion of our federalism and to loosen the tight leash of the present very awkward presidential unitary system. Restructuring is an existential issue. Run as we may, we cannot hide from it. However, given all the controversies and fears around this subject, talking openly about it, openly expressing one's ideas of restructuring is in itself a testament of bold, courageous, and forthright leadership. On the other hand, shying away from expressing an opinion is to be pretentious and to play the ostrich, that funny bird that puts its head between its legs and pretend that all is well with it, even in the presence of grave dangers. This is why, as of necessity, ask and demand for clear and unambiguous answers from the four leading parties and their presidential candidates for the 2023 election. What are their plans on the matter of restructuring the country? What we have seen so far from 3 out of the 4 leading presidential candidates is merely pretentious gamemanship, and in some instances, the arrogant dismissal of a very serious matter. Take Mr. Peter Obi of Labour Party, who masterfully shies away and dodges the mention of the word restructuring. This is because he's afraid. He is fearful and lacks the courage to swim in the controversial waters of the subject. And then take APC's Bola Tinubu, who in the not so distant past used to posture around as the champion of true federalism, but who is now pretentiously playing the ostrich game of see no evil, say no evil, a duplicitous game until he gets power and then he can do whatever he alone knows. And then Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso of NNPP, who has stated it loudly, time without number, that he will maintain the status quo if elected, because as far as he is concerned, the country is perfect the way it is. Therefore, if nothing is damaged, there is absolutely nothing to repair. But in contrast to these 3 distinguished leaders, we have PDP's Atiku Abubakar, who has openly declared that one way or the other, restructuring is a must if he is elected. Atiku has proposed the devolution of powers, a kind of loosening of the ropes that bind us together, as his own idea of restructuring. Now, whether this meets everyone's expectations or not, at least it is a good starting point to what, in any case, is a continuous process in nation building. After all, as we often say, half bread is better than none. Let us briefly hear Atiku express resolve to restructure the Nigerian polity.
Over the years, Nigeria has promoted, tolerated, and indeed celebrated a defective political structure. Our states and local governments are too weak to meet their constitutional responsibilities. Consequently, the federal government has succeeded in emasculating them and taking away those responsibilities, and along with these resources which belong to them. The structure of our country is not working. If we were to develop into a united, secure, and prosperous nation, we must be bold enough to stitch all the structural false lines that have arrested our development as a nation. We must adopt a new economic management model and a new political structure that will cure all the federating units of their addiction to oil revenues. We must restructure the polity and the economy. It is a must.
Certainly, electing Atiku as president will present us some hope of the loosening of the chains around our legs, so that we can at least move more freely and fend for ourselves at our own individual speed and capacities, while remaining federating states of a united Nigerian Republic. This is why, in the case of the present circumstance of our economic and political emasculation and suffocation by the overwhelming central presidential powers, which has led us to this situation in which we can no longer breathe, we should be thankful that we have a candidate who has offered to restructure. That is to loosen the ropes around our legs and necks so that we can get some fresh air. Otherwise, the death and decay of the country will be our sad fate. Just like the unfortunate fate of the tied-up bouquet of birds. Factually, when it comes to restructuring of the country, Atiku knows. Hence, in 2023, vote for restructuring, vote for PDP, vote for Atiku.